So, dear viewers, I welcome you all to episode.
One, yeah. Good. Yeah, we are live. Go.
Dear viewers, I welcome you all to episode 5 of Run Pe Charcha. So, if you have missed out on our previous episodes, you can visit YouTube and you will find our previous episodes. And they were really very informative and engaging. So, our guests they shared their valuable insights on endurance, strength training, hydration, and nutrition. But today we are going to cover the technical part of running, and we are going to talk about running mechanics. Today we have Mr. Arvind with us. He is deeply involved in running science, mechanics, database training. Not only this, he is a certified CrossFit level trainer and an experienced marathon runner. What I know is that he has recently finished his full marathon in 3 hours 18 minutes. And he is the co-founder of geeksonfeet.com. It is one of the India's leading online platform for runners. He also runs a studio, Run Mechanics, which is really helping runners to improve their running mechanics and forms. So, Mr. Arvind is originally from Srikakulam, but right now he is based at Bangalore. So we welcome you, Mr. Arvind. We are looking
Thank you so
forward,
much.
yeah, to have listen to you and to learn a lot from you. So,
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for inviting me in.
uh,
And I'm very glad to connect to the runners and speak about whatever little I know.
thank you so much for being with us for today's episode. Okay, so Mr. Arvind, before proceeding, can you tell us something about this geeksonfeet.com?
Sure. So I'll give a quick 2-minute view. So geeksandfeed.com is primarily a website. I think some of you might have seen it already. So we do different kinds of things for runners. So the idea is that um, there's a lot of information, but India specific and Indian runner specific information is very little, right? You see all kinds of articles everywhere, but they're very disconnected from how we see running. So the idea is to build a knowledge dissemination website for Indian runners. So that was the idea. So we do different things. So one is races. We do for all the major races, we do route reviews. Basically, if you're running Mumbai Marathon, you want to know what the route is, how to prepare yourself for the route. We do that. That is one part. We do also race reports. Somebody who ran Mumbai Marathon, how they ran, what is the basic strategies, and those kinds of things. Apart from the routes, we also do running shoes. That's a big thing that we do. I think a lot of runners in India really not aware of the different types of shoes and how do we use those shoes. Again, reviews of these shoes tend to be US centric or UK centric or Europe centric. So we try to create reviews for Indian runners and the shoes that are available in India, more importantly. And third, we are doing is training plans. So we do free training plans as well as paid personalized training plans. These are again science-based kind of training plans. So this is something that we started about 6 months ago called Run Strong. Uh, Apart from these three, we also do other types of information articles about fueling, pacing, training, all kinds of things. So, and all of these available in different mediums. Like say we have newsletter, which is weekly, comes to your inbox. You just subscribe, and then you can then see what we do. But apart from that, we also have a podcast, which is audio based, so which you can listen. Right. So,
Okay,
so this is all what we do.
that's great. So race report means you analyze other races
So race reports are like, for example, somebody like you ran, say, Mumbai Marathon. You want to write about your race itself, like how did you pace, what did your training was like, did your race went well, what did your experience was, what are the learnings. So the idea is that somebody who experienced ran Mumbai Marathon, and if I'm planning to run the Mumbai Marathon, I can learn from it, right? So what better way to learn from than learning from an experienced runner. So that was the idea. So anybody who has trained and then ran the race strategically, we would like to kind of, extract that knowledge and then present it to everyone.
Okay, okay. So that's wonderful job which you are doing. So okay, let's proceed. So let's come to running mechanics. So
Right.
for
So
someone
running
new to
mechanics
the
is the other
concept,
part.
so pardon?
Sorry, I didn't mention about run mechanics. Running mechanics is another thing that we do apart from gigs and free, which is called runmechanics.in is our website. But we have a physical studio in Bangalore where runners can come and then check the running mechanics. Like we do a video-based as well as sensor-based analysis. So we do a
Okay, okay.
comprehensive analysis of, I'll explain more about what is running mechanics and all that, but just to give you an idea, this is what we do. I'm a certified running data analyst as well. So we
Okay.
do both online also, like some people send us the videos and we analyze and then we kind of give them inputs.
So, okay, okay. So, like you make them run on the treadmill or
Treadmill, yes. Right.
okay. And online with online videos
So
also.
online video also, I mean, remotely, I mean, there is no facility in India, frankly, which does what we do.
Okay.
So, and we cannot, of course, scale across cities, so it's not easy.
Yeah, I
So the idea is that, people can send videos. We will give some specification as in how to record, etc. In fact, few runners from Vizag also got it done. So it's a basically idea is to help runners to understand the running form and mechanics and then how they can improve, especially those who have goals, right? I mean, if you want to run casually, recreationally, it may not matter as much, but if you want to run with a performance goal in mind, this will help.
okay. So, see, like for someone new to the concept, so we'll start with like what exactly do running mechanics means,
Right,
and why
right.
should like runners care about their mechanics?
A very, very good question. Um, so I think this particular question will answer everything what we will talk in the later sections of the this particular session, Run PE CHARCHA. But I think this is kind of foundation, right? I think everybody needs to understand this. Without that, the rest of the conversation probably doesn't make sense. So if you have to look at running, there are three important parts to our running, right? One is the cardiorespiratory fitness that we have, which is the aerobic efficiency, right? So this comes primarily from running a lot of miles, running different kinds of types of runs, like interval runs, threshold runs, long runs, easy runs, recovery runs, all kinds of runs. It will basically, at the end of the day, improve your cardiorespiratory fitness and your aerobic fitness. And shorter distance runners also focus on anaerobic fitness, but that's basically what it is. And the second part is the strength, right? So as a runner, how strong you are, how much force you are able to generate. That also kind of defines your running performance. The third is the efficiency of your running, right? So if I had to kind of compare this with a car, right? So you can have a big engine, you have a lot of, fuel, all that is great, right? So that is the car. So you had a nice body and, excellent car. The third one which I was talking about is the running mechanics, is how efficient the car is, like how efficient the engine is, right? So that is the running mechanics. Is the you know is the mechanical parts are well lubricated, for example, right? In the case of a car. In the case of a runner, it is about how efficiently you're moving mechanically. At the end of the day, uh, we are made of a skeleton, which is the bones and muscles, right? So those are all mechanical parts. Everything is happening because we are moving and they are moving and we are able to run. So how efficiently we do that activity is what running mechanics is all about.
Okay. So, and why should runners care about their mechanics?
Okay. So that's a good question which I missed. So if you look at it, earlier I was mentioning about the running performance. Now, the aerobic fitness is majority of how you meet your performance goals. Like if I have to kind of create a pie chart, aerobic efficiency would be 60% of running performance, right? So another 15 to 20% is the strength aspect, how much force you are able to generate. The remaining 20% is the mechanics, how well you are able to move, right? Your movement patterns, your technique, all of that matters, right? So fortunately, in running, the technique, the mechanics aren't as important compared to, say, if you are playing something more athletic. Like, for example, if you're a sprinter, mechanics are like very, very important. That is 50%. When compared to long distance running, it's only 20%, right? So, but
Yes.
still, it is an important component, especially if you are an endurance runner, right? So, the more you run, the better to be more efficient. Otherwise, what also happens is one is the efficiency you're talking about, performance you're talking about. The other aspect of running mechanics is the injury prevention or minimizing the injuries. I would say preventing because you can't really prevent injuries. Injuries do come no matter what we do, but how do we reduce the chances of getting injured? Right? So that is also an important part. Every runner is concerned about. Like I'm training for, say, a marathon with 12-week plan, and then suddenly sixth week I get injured. So the whole thing goes off the charts. So all the hard work is kind of going down the drain. So you don't want that to happen as well. So that is another reason. So one, if you have goals, you want to meet the goals. The 20% factor, which is running mechanics, which is very important, and then of course preventing injuries.
Okay. So, like, according to you, for sprinters, mechanics is different. For long distance runners, it is different. So, you guide them
Absolutely.
accordingly.
Yes, yes. They're very different because in sprinting, mechanics are primarily meant to produce more force. That is the primary idea. Efficiency is not the primary goal there because you run for a very short distance,
Short
very
distance.
short duration. So, but in the case of endurance running, long distance running, ultra running, the running mechanics is primarily about how efficient you are. So we use a word called running economy. It is like, what we normally see in the case of
Okay.
cars, right? Fuel economy. So running economy is equivalent word. So how well you can have your running economy. That's where the focus of running mechanics and the distance running.
Okay. So, Mr. Arvind, you must be like doing this analysis on regular basis, like you said, offline and online. So, you
Right.
must be observing many runners on regular basis. So, what are the common mechanical errors you see in runners?
Okay. So that's a good question. So most of the time, so there are many things that we look at. So I'll not go into all of the details because within the constraints of this discussion,
Yeah,
also I
but the
think
key points, if you can cover.
right, right, of course. So since it is a lot visual, it's very difficult to explain it in the words, but I'll try to explain as much as possible. Right. So the first and foremost is the one of the things that I've seen. People think running is not a skill sport, right? I mean, anybody can run.
Yeah,
They just start running. That
absolutely.
is unlike other sports, like say if you take cricket or any other sport. Normally, people start the sport with a coach or somebody experienced for teaching them how to do it. But in the case of running, it is not the case. So people run, and it is natural, of course, right? But that's where we miss the point. Where since it is natural, we think it is okay. Let's buy some shoes and then let's start running. And interestingly, in the case of running, you tend to improve no matter where you start, right? So if you start at like say today you start and you're running like say 1 kilometer in say 8 minutes. If you over the month, you will bring it down to 7 minutes, 6 minutes, 5 minutes, and so on and so forth without any training, without anybody's guidance, right? But that's where the problem is. So the problem is that most of the times people tend to what we call two things actually. One, they don't have the technique to run efficiently. So what they do is all they do is they move their feet fast, right? So they do two things. One, they either do what we call high cadence, like they move the feet very fast to get faster, or they do what they call overstriding, right? They basically try to reach with their foot forward, right? So overstriding is one of the common mistakes in running. What happens when you overstride is that you land much ahead of yourself. So you, as a runner, your body weight is here, but your foot is much ahead of you. So you're landing at a much before than your body, right? So that causes a lot of issues with your knee and ankle joints. This is one common mistake. And no matter what kind of runner you are, overstriding is a big issue, right? So this is one common issue. The second thing we also see, which is very common, which is a big issue in runners, is that they don't focus on strength. Because of that, they have inability to engage their core effectively in running, right? So there are two problems to that. One, they don't have the necessary strength. That is the first part, right? So you don't have good core strength and use that core strength in running. Second, in many cases, runners have the strength, but they don't have the technique to use that core strength while running, right? While running, they just let the body loose completely, right? So, I mean, relaxed is different from this, what I'm saying. So that is the second problem, unable to engage the core, the hips. A lot of times the focus is more on the feet. Okay, what shoes I'm using, how am I landing? And those are the kinds of things that we look at. But what we don't look at is a lot of the problems that you have mechanically from running is actually comes from the upper body down, right? Especially from the hips and down. So that is a big problem that I see. Like many runners, they have what we call pelvic drops. Like they're unable to engage their pelvis when they're running. So running is a single leg sport, right? So no other sport has this. As in, you're always on one leg when you're running.
Yeah,
Right? At no
true.
point you're on two legs. Yeah. So that's another important thing that one has to consider. So when you are on single leg, your ability to stabilize your pelvis and then make your body straight is very important, right? So that's another common mistake that we see. Apart from that, there are a few other form issues, but I wouldn't give them much weight. Those are
Okay.
important for efficiency. And when you're trying to extract that every single second of your marathon, then it probably makes a difference.
Okay. So you said overstriding and then not using the core muscles like
Or
properly.
efficiently,
You
yes.
mentioned cadence also. So can
Yeah.
you tell us something about cadence?
Yeah. So this is actually an interesting thing. A lot of runners start their running very late in their uh, life, right? Like most of the runners, you know. I mean, while we are naturally runners, but most of us play other sports which are more interesting than running, and then we take up running when we become old enough that we can't find people to play with us. So that's when we pick up running. So given that, what happens is that when you're old enough, your running stride is actually the pace at which you run or the speed at which you run is primarily made of two parts. One, the stride length, as in how much distance you are able to cover in every single step. The second is how fast you are moving your feet, right? So the cadence is how fast you are moving the feet.
Moving your feet.
Essentially,
Yeah.
it's the number of steps that you're taking per minute, right? So majority of the older runners, especially master runners, they don't have good strides. So what they tend to do is they tend to move their feet faster. Okay. So this is one type of runners you see. Those who are very athletic, comes from other sports, very good. So they have a good stride. So in these runners, what happens is they tend to do a lot of overstriding because they, for some reason, cannot move their feet fast enough. They never focused on it, right? Because they have big stride, they continue to focus on big stride. They're able to generate a lot of force in every stride. So they continue to focus on that. So the focus will become trying to increase the stride rather than increasing the frequency of the steps. So we see both kinds of runners. Those runners who primarily depend on cadence to increase their speed, and those runners who focus on overstriding or stride itself to increase their speed. The ideal thing is that somebody who balances both, right? That is the ideal.
Ideal. Okay, okay. So I was coming to this only next that like everyone runs differently. So is there any ideal form that runners should aim to? So
Yeah,
coming to your previous,
right.
the
So
balance
there are some
between.
universal principles which are very important. As I said, like overstriding should not be there. Ability to balance and stabilize your pelvis, that is very important, right? And avoiding unnecessary movements. Like a lot of runners move their like elbows, too much. especially for long distance running. In sprinters, it is important because they want to generate as much as force, so they basically tend to move their elbows excessively. But for distance runners, you try to minimize the movement as much as possible, right? So these are the three, four universal principles for every runners. And of course, if you are looking at, injury prevention, etc., then you got to ensure you have the necessary range of motion, the mobility, those are very important as well. And then
Okay.
strength, of course.
Okay. So, like, should runners like consciously try to change their form or let it evolve naturally?
Okay, so this is a debatable question, right? So there are people who think that running is natural, hence we should discover our own form over time. That is actually kind of right. I mean, that's how it should be. But the problem is that, as I said earlier, people who take up running in their late years, like say after 30 or 40, they already have certain movement restrictions. Now, those movement restrictions tend to decide how you run, right? Like, for example, if I have tight hip flexors, then I can't get a good stride. So all I'll do is I try to improve my running by only increasing the cadence, which is not necessarily the ideal thing to do, right? And similarly, if you don't have a good hip flexion, your ability to raise the knee, then you tend to overstride, right? So if you let it evolve, then you'll continue to overstride, right? And then most of the overstriders will strike on the heel. Okay. So those are the kinds of issues that you will see, and why heel striking is a bad, etc. We can talk in detail later, but the idea is that overstriding itself is not very good. So if you let it evolve, that is a problem, right? So if you don't kind of consciously ensure you're evolving in a right way, you will tend to pick up very incorrect or rather inefficient movement patterns and mechanics, which can affect your running efficiency. And of course, as I said earlier, it can cause more injuries than what otherwise could have been.
Okay, so but like you must have seen that every runner is different. Like
Right.
for everyone, like mechanics is different. It is not
Mechanics are
tailor-made.
different. I think we kind of look at two things. One is running form, right? We have this ideal running form, which in our mind, because so we would have seen some elite runner like Kipchoge, and then we think that everybody should run like that. But that is
Yeah.
not necessarily correct, right? So that cannot be the way. But at the same time, as I said, those universal principles we need to look at, right? Like for example, I'll give you a simple example, right? At elite level also, there are a lot of runners who do heel striking. Okay. Uh, so do they need to change it to mid-foot strike or forefoot strike? Not necessarily true, because that is how they have evolved over time, right? They kind of built their muscle strength, their activation patterns are all in done in such a way that they kind of run efficiently in that form, right? Like one other example is if you have say uh, strong calves and very good Achilles tendon, and then you would want to probably mostly midfoot strike or forefoot strike. But if you don't have strong calf muscles, right, for whatever the reason, so heel strike is more appropriate in that case, right? So trying to force yourself to move to another pattern is not necessarily worthy effort, because you'll get injured in the process. And similarly, you've seen some people they move from one shoe to the other. For example, they use certain kinds of shoes and suddenly they want to move to barefoot running and things like that. So the idea is that okay, barefoot running is more natural, and then I'll run more naturally. My form will become more natural. But that's not necessarily true. That will basically cause additional issues that otherwise would not have been, needed.
Okay. Okay, so when I want to share my experience with you, like when I started running, so I started running at the age of 37.
All right. Okay.
So it is quite late.
Yeah, yeah. Most of us
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. So when I started running, so I realized that my speed was not increasing. So my husband is also a runner and he is a better runner. So I tried to like copy him. I thought maybe my form is not correct. So I tried to copy him. I tried. Uh, so then I realized that it was affecting my running. So it was not improving, but it was
Mm.
affecting my running. So then I left it. Then I thought it's better to go naturally. So I kept running. I started with 5 kilometers, then 10, then 21, then entered ultra running also. So I realized like slowly, naturally, it has improved. Like
That's
cadence has
good.
improved at least.
Right, right.
But like you said, the stride length, maybe because of age, still I'm working on it. Then I'm
Yeah,
sure your this today's episode will definitely help me also to improve my mechanics.
that'll be great. That'll be great, actually. So yeah, I mean, I agree completely. As in, imitating somebody's running style is not the best way to do. But
Yeah,
I think what we should do is that within the constraints of what we are, right, we should try to see if we can do things like what I was earlier saying. Don't overstride, keep the pelvis stable, try to avoid excessive movements, right? And build strength and mobility in the important muscle groups that required from running. So I think if we can keep those basic principles, right? So I think a lot of times what we also do is we try to overcomplicate things, right? So we should not overcomplicate, but at the same time, we should not ignore as well, right? So ignorance is not
absolutely.
good either. So.
Okay. So, like, according to you, like, which injuries are most common you have observed,
Okay.
like, linked to this poor
Yeah.
mechanic?
Yeah. So, I'm not a physio, but what we have seen, a lot of people come to our
Yeah,
studio
but
and
I'm
we have
sure you must be
yeah,
like addressing.
yeah, we have analyzed almost like 500 plus runners so far. So most runners come to us after they get injured, right? So they think that there is an issue with their running mechanics. At that point, they come to us. So very common issue is plantar fasciitis, which is basically the issue with the plantar below the heel, right? So that's where the pain comes in normally. And this is very common injury, especially for runners who are older, people who starts running after 35. Uh, that is one major injury. Second one is shin splints. This is also very common that we see. The third injury is the runner's knee or IT band. The two other injuries around the knee. Those are also quite common. Apart from that, there are other injuries, like for example, people do have issues with their, hamstrings. They do have issues with their hips, but those injuries tend to be very rare because normally what I've seen is that hamstring injuries primarily are for faster runners, like those who are really targeting performance goals. Like say 5K, I want to do under 18 minutes or things like that, right? So those are kinds of people typically tend to get hamstring injuries because hamstring activation is very high in sprinting and fast running, right? But not for distance running, normal distance running. Um, so these are the major injuries. I would say plantar fasciitis is very common, and then shin splints is very common. Then I've seen knee injuries, both runner's knee and PFPS and IT band syndrome. Right, so those are the
Okay.
common
So,
ones.
like, what are the common suggestions which you give to these
Okay,
runners
great.
who come after injuries?
So yeah, I think a lot of times the injuries come because of one, as I said, overstriding is one common reason why injuries come. So both ID band issue and plantar issue are related to overstriding and heel striking, right? So I think that's the um, first thing to do is, of course, you need to work on the injury itself. When you're injured, you can't run really. So you need to first come out of the injury. Once you come out of the injury, you try to kind of work on reducing the overstriding. And runners who typically run with, bigger stride length, but they don't have good cadence, they can work on cadence. So that'll work magic. So if your cadence typically is 160 or 165 or below 160, then improving cadence by like 5, 6 points, like say 170, would be an excellent way to avoid these kind of injuries. Right? So sliding is one major one. And knee injuries typically the knee itself is not a muscle, but the muscles around the knee is what actually supports the knee. So strengthening the muscles around the knee is a big uh, what is beneficial to these runners, right? So the hamstrings, the quadriceps, right? So that is a big help, and also the hip area, right? So earlier I was saying, right? So the core and the hip, those are basically what primarily generates the force. So making them strong will help the entire the chain below that. Like running is like if you look at our body, it's like a chain of things that happens, right? So you generate force at the hip, then you actually flex the knee, which is you raise the knee, and then you land. So all of these actually happens what we call a kinetic chain. The entire movement actually connects with each other. Now, if you have a weak core and weak hips, then naturally you will not be able to transmit that power from your mid body to the lower body, right? So that basically kind of disconnected, right? So in that case, what happens is you tend to overuse the smaller muscles. So the bigger muscles are the glute muscles, the quadriceps, and the hamstrings. And if you don't use them effectively, then what happens is that you'll tend to put a lot of stress on the smaller muscles, which are the calf muscles and the ankle, right? So Achilles and so on and so forth. So those are the relatively weaker muscles comparatively to generate force. So that is basically what it is. At the end of the day, you have to strengthen yourself, um, ensure that you're engaging your core better, you're using the core better when you're running. So all of this comes from strength training and then transferring the strength training into running. Okay, more important. That's also very important because a lot of people do strength train, but translating that into how to basically improve your running is very important. So you need to do a lot of drills, for example, right, which can help.
Okay. Okay, so like you said, the during for long distance runners, the movement should be less. So if somebody is sprinting and suddenly he has to shift from sprints
Mm.
to the endurance sports, so how will they, like will it come with a practice? So you have to
Yeah, of
consciously
course.
control your shoulders.
Right. So, yeah, I think I think some of the habits of sprinters have to go away when you want to come into distance running. Um, I think that transition is not very difficult, I would say, because, unless they're doing both, then that's a separate thing. But
Okay.
people do tend to change as they change their speed. Normally, they will not do that. But I think, as I said, the wrong habits can be there. People tend to use the wrong habits. They think that is how we have to run, so they forcefully run like that, which is should be avoided.
Okay. So, like as a female runner, so I want to know, like, I have observed that in the last like 5, 6 years, ladies in India have also picked up running.
Right.
So I want to know, like, you have more female runners or male runners visiting you.
So we do have quite a few female runners. Dr. Maudry has visited us, Dr. Gayatri has visited us from Vizag. So yeah, we do have. Of course, I would say 30% of the runners who come to our studio are female runners. Right?
Oh, it's a
So
good number
female
actually.
runners, yeah, they do have their own unique style of running because female runners have a larger pelvis, okay, which would mean that it isn't as stable as for men, right? So pelvis area for female is relatively unstable compared to men. So female runners tend to have more issues with their hips and the knees. It's a well-known thing. You can Google and you'll find that common injuries in women runners tend to be because of the wider pelvis. All right.
Okay. So. Okay, so can you tell our viewers like few simple exercises or drills, as you mentioned earlier, like
Mhm.
drills to reinforce healthy running patterns or healthy running forms?
Right. So I think one of the things that I would recommend to every runner is connecting the the neurological system with the muscles. So this is called neuromuscular coordination. So that is very important for efficient running. So what I mean is that for example, imagine you have to um, walk on a rope, for example, right? So you can't really walk, right, unless you are really trained for it. So what the training would involve is that you have to balance yourself very efficiently. And first time when you try it, you'll fall down, right? You probably try it 10 times, also you'll fall down. But when you try it 100 times, you'll get better at it. So so what happens in that process is that you are connecting your muscles with your neurological system much better, right? So that's what happens to happen when you're running. As I said earlier, running is a single leg sport, right? So your ability to be efficient on one leg is very, very important. So your ability to balance quickly, stabilize it, and then move forward, right? So any drills that involve in neuromuscular system, right, which are basically things like, for example, escapes. This is a very common drill that every runner should be doing. Um, things like high knees, things like all the skips, A skips, B skips, any of the skips that you can try, karaoke drills, bounds, all of them will help you. Bounds actually an excellent exercise to bring your strength training into running, transferring the strength training that you do, the power that you can generate in strength into running. Right? So, so any exercises, any drills that basically involve movement, dynamic movement, and at the same time you'll be able to uh, that need a lot of coordination. Right? Like for example, escapes needs an excellent coordination. A lot of runners tend to struggle to do escapes because they don't have the coordination. So doing having excellent coordination and not necessarily everyone has it. Some people are better at connecting the neuromuscular system. Some people are not. But that said, you can practice and you can be better at it.
Okay, so like how often they should do in a week, these drills?
So in these neuromuscular drills, like running drills, this should be in my view should be done every run before the run, like a 5 minute, 10 minute kind of thing as part of
Okay.
your warm up. Instead of just doing some stretching, you should do these drills, right? So that will basically help. So anytime you run, just do these drills and then start running. That would
Okay.
be an excellent way to warm up as well as then start running.
Okay. So, I'm sure road runners must be visiting you, but trail runners also. Na?
Yes, yes, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah. So, can you throw some light on like how running form is different for road runners and for trail runners?
All right. So whatever I just told about running mechanics, for trail runners, you have to double it down, right? Because trail running, you're running in uneven surface. That
Yeah,
means that whatever I said earlier about single leg sport and then ability to stabilize and balance is very important. In the case of trail, it is like a lot more important, right?
absolutely.
In trail running, you don't have a fixed stride, right? In the sense that based on the terrain, you might have to reduce a stride or increase a stride, or within next step to step, you might have to change, right? One step, you might have to take a bigger stride, and the next step, smaller stride. So very, very dynamic. That means that your neuromuscular coordination should be extremely good, right? So trail running itself will give you that in the sense that, as you run more trails, you tend to pick up that learning. But at the same time, suddenly, I sign up for Ultra Paderu, 50K because I have never run a trail. And then if I do that, that can be recipe for injury. So you got to be training for it. So you do some few trail runs before the actual run, and then also do some of these drills so that you basically better prepared for such uh, efficient coordination that is required. So that is an important part. So high cadence and ability to vary the cadence, ability to quickly balance. So that's extremely important. And the trail running also normally involves, of course, uneven terrain, which also means that, you have a lot of elevations as well as downhill running. So that requires even, changing technique. You cannot run with a single technique, right? Unlike road running, you can prepare for it, you train for it, and you run the same way no matter where you go, right? But that is not the case with trail running.
Yeah. So, and what about the posture? Can you throw some light on the posture part?
So posture is a very so when people see running form or running mechanics, they tend to equate posture to the running mechanics. Posture, there are a lot of variations. People have, like for example, some people run with a slightly elevated neck, like they kind of increase kind of move their neck upwards and run. Some people tend to look down and run. So there are different ways in people run. Some people, um, you know, uh, do a lot of left to right movements. So those there are very variations in how people run. Some of them are not necessarily important. Like for example, when people look up slightly ahead versus some people look down, they may not be as important. But if
Okay.
you read internet, they might say that it will cause
So
that,
it's
it will
like
cause
a
this.
natural. It's
Right. Yeah, whatever works for you, do it. The reason why some people do like this is they have breathing difficulties and they bring down, so they tend to pick up that over time, and they feel that is efficient. So that's fine. There's no reason to change that, right? So posture, in that sense, it's not very important. But there are a few things that are bad in terms of posture. Like for example, a lot of people bend like kind of slouch when they run, right? So that's not necessarily a good thing. Um, uh, so that basically, especially in endurance running, it's not a good thing because as you slouch, you'll not be able to engage your core and you'll not be able to engage your glutes well. So that is not necessarily the best for endurance. So those things to be avoided. So the slouching, because it's a habit, then they should try to come out of it by doing drills and then being conscious about it. But if they're slouching because lack of strength and lack of strength in the core, then they should work on the strength. Right? So I would say for trail running, no different, right? So the
the same.
ability to keep the posture intact is extremely important no matter what. But that said, when you're doing ultra events, on trails, you will fatigue no matter what, right? So you cannot have the same posture when you're in the initial 20 kilometers to the final 20 kilometers. So you tend to fatigue. So a kind of that cannot be avoided or is unavoidable. So you try to keep the posture as much as possible. But if you cannot, you cannot, right? Nobody can do anything about it. But that would mean that there is opportunity to kind of improve the strength further.
Okay. So now let's talk about the shoes.
Oh, okay,
I'm sure
cool.
our viewers must be waiting for me to cover this topic. So shall we select shoes based on our running mechanics?
Yeah, then few things I would definitely look at it. But first and foremost, shoe selection, the key is to find shoes that are very comfortable. That I think that's very important, no matter what else. But comfort is very key. And then also choosing a shoe for the right occasion. Right? If you're doing ultra trail, like something like ultra, 100K, then you got to be extremely uh, shoe that is extremely good with respect to handle the terrain, right? Like for example, the hills, the stones, and the water that you have.
The trail
Uh,
shoes sort of.
yeah, trail shoes would be very important, right? So, but if you're running maybe a smaller event and you don't want to really spend money, then that's fine. That's fine because then you got to be extremely careful when you're doing trail running because otherwise you get injured. So that's I think is one part. But that said, in terms of your mechanics and if you have to connect with the shoes, right? So I think that's important. So if you are um, heel striker, right? As in your primarily landing point is on the heel, then you would want to pick up shoes that have a higher cushion or more cushion in the heel. So, which would mean that so the shoes have something called heel to toe drop. Basically, the front part of the shoe is slightly smaller in terms of the height versus the rear part of the shoe, the heel, right?
Okay.
So the heel is bigger, the front part is smaller, then that's called higher heel to toe drop. Okay? So this is
Okay.
basically say 40 mm, and this is say 25 mm. Okay, so that is a 15 mm drop. Okay, so that is like what we call heel to toe drop. So or just call heel drop. So if heel drop is say 14 mm, that is 12 mm to 14 mm, consider normally is a high drop, and anything below 8 mm considered low drop. So for heel strikers, we typically recommend higher drop shoes like 12 to 14 mm. And if you have calf injuries, etc., typically we use a high heel drop shoes so that they reduce the pressure on the calf. And for other runners who focusing on efficiencies, good stride, and they can actually hit on the midfoot, then 8 mm and below. Right? So that is the
Okay.
one primary criteria when choosing shoes. And other criteria to look at in terms of shoes is the what we call pronation, right? So this is a bit tricky thing to understand because you as an individual may not understand, how much pronation you have. Every runner would have pronation, but there is a classification called underpronation, neutral pronation, overpronation, based on how much pronation you have. And some of it is actually marketing jargon because shoe companies tend to sell you shoes based on, saying that if you are overpronated, hence you have to buy these shoes and so on and so forth. But that do affect shoe selection in the sense that if you are getting injured because of the pronation that you have, then you might want to consider certain types of shoes in the short term while you're working on the strength, right? So the overpronation especially happens because you have weakness somewhere. Either you have, say, extremely weak hip, which causes the hip to rotate, which causes
Okay.
the foot to also rotate. That is one type of pronation. Okay,
Okay.
the reason for pronation. There are other regions of pronation is like, for example, they have a weak arch, foot strength is very weak, right? So one of the things that we recommend runners to work on apart from general body strength is the strength of the foot itself. We tend to, I mean, no exercises people do for foot, right? Because we think that that is what it is. But you can actually work on the foot strength, increasing the foot arch, the arch strength. So you can work on that to make the foot stronger so that you can use any shoe. But at the same time, if you are weak foot and it cannot like magically become stronger in a week, right? So in the meantime, you want to consider shoes which are a little supportive for your foot pronation would be ideal. So that is how you look at the shoes. And apart from these, there are shoes for races versus long runs versus easy runs versus speed training. So for races, you want to consider shoes which are very light, probably have carbon plates, which can give you the edge performance. Similarly, when you want to do long runs, really long runs for training, the goal is to recover well. So you might want to use shoes with a higher cushion so that you can recover well. Like say, if I do 20 miles today and then tomorrow I want to again run, I want to use shoes which can help me to recover quickly, right? So that is the idea of long run shoes. And then for speed training, typically again we'll use a very light shoe with good bounce and probably have a carbon plate as well, right? A lot of people nowadays use speed trainers also with carbon plate. So that is good. For easy running, daily training, you want to have, like if you, for example, you're just starting and you don't want to consider like three, four different shoes, then you want to buy one shoe, then you will go for an all-rounder, like a daily trainer, which has like multiple
All
things
the
it can do.
Okay. So, can you tell, like, you have mentioned many times, like, heel striking, heel striking. So, I want to know, like, 4 feet versus heel striking. Can you tell
Mhm.
me something about this?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, what striders typically tend to do full striking in the sense that they land on the heel, but not necessarily true. Even regular runners also tend to strike on the heel. The way it happens is that it is how much strength we have in the calf muscles as well as our ankle, right? So how well we are able to engage our ankle and have good mobility at the ankle, that actually decides. So typically, people who heel strike tend to have weaker calf muscles, right? So then they use their they basically land with a straighter They don't bend the knee as much when they're landing. So that is basically the weakness around the knee itself in terms of, their ability to flex the knee is lower and their calf strength is lower. So they do heel striking. Otherwise, people do mid-foot striking and forefoot striking. As I said earlier, it is not necessarily always universal, and some people do because it's become a habit, or and that is working best for them. So that is not as important as what I was earlier saying. Overstriding is something that we need to avoid, whether you heel strike or mid-foot strike or forefoot strike. Overstriding is what we should avoid. So, in my view, the heel strike itself is not the problem and not to be worried much about.
Okay. So, one small thing which our beginner runners can do to run more efficiently.
Okay. So beginner runners, I would say suggest one drills, running drills, which I'm repeating myself here, but running drills are extremely important. So that is basically what will make you a better runner. And of course, strength training, again, very, very important. People think running is not really a sport that requires strength because I'm able to naturally run, so just keep running. And also, people enjoy running because it gives the endorphins and it releases the endorphins and you feel good. But strength training is little monotonous and then it is a little hard. You have to work inside a room. Wherein in running you can come out and run and run around the beautiful beach environment, but it cannot be the case in strength training. So you may not like it as much, but I think that's very important. The more time you spend in the gym, the better you do as a runner. So do do strength training as well. I think these are the two important things. And then, of course, be conscious about your running technique and mechanics. Don't be ignorant. So keep watch out. If somebody comments on your running form, don't take it negatively. But again, I would not recommend people to just comment every runner and saying you're not running correctly or so. But don't do that because, as I said, there are a lot of subtleties involved in how you run, why you run that way. So just saying somebody that you're not running correctly, that will force them to change the form without realizing how it will affect the actual running. So that is not good either. So don't change things, but I think stick to basics, stick to the universal principles. Don't overstride. Ensure you're engaging your core, or reduce the excessive movements. I think stick to those principles. I think you're good.
Okay. So, like you have already talked about the strength training.
Right.
Yeah, it is equally important for good form.
Yeah.
Like I've noticed that many runners, like they have to cover their mileage also, so they skip on this strength training
Right.
part. So
That's
can
true.
you suggest like few exercises which runners can do? Maybe not if they cannot go to gym, or they can do at
Right.
home
Right.
also, and it can
Yeah. Yeah.
enhance their.
So we have a beautiful YouTube channel, youtube.com/Geeks on Feet. Sorry, at Geeks on Feet, ampersand Geeks on Feet. Sorry, not ampersand, at Geeks on Feet, youtube.com/Geeks on Feet. So check out the channel. We have videos for runners. We call it Workout of the Week, which is actually also in our newsletter. So okay, if I have to give you a flavor, I mean, Excel exercise itself, I cannot tell, right? There's so many of them we can do. But I think the focus should be one, I think building strong core. I think exercises like, glute bridges, dead bugs, um, squats, all of that will help you to improve your core strength, hence become a good runner. And exercises that will improve your stability, single leg stability, that's are equally important. As I said earlier, running is a single leg sport, so you have to work on that. So these are basically called unilateral strength exercises, basically doing strength on one side of the body at a time. Right? So things like, say, for example, lunges. You do lunges with one leg, single leg deadlifts. Um, then you do single leg squats. So anything that involves single leg, right? Suitcase deadlifts and things like that. So all of them will asymmetrically force the body to work stronger on one side. So that will basically help you. Then the strength work that will make your glutes stronger. That's very important. Like things like, squats, right? Like weighted squats, like using barbell or dumbbells, whichever you can find. Those are important. And fourth type is power exercises. basically where you can explosively generate force. Like for example, say jumps, plyometric work, right? So any jumps that you do, basically you're taking the strength that you have and then you are using that strength in a very short time. Right? So that basically helps your running, because in running, essentially what you're doing is that you have a lot of strength. Every single step, you're forcing that strength to move your body quickly. So any power generation exercises like kettlebell swings, squat jumps, any kind of jumps actually will help as well. So in my view, these are the four types of strength training that you can do. And apart from that, you can focus on mobility, basically end range motion strength, right? Like for example, ability to um, deep squat, for example, very important. So those kinds.
Okay, so Mr. Arvind, it was really a very informative session. So, on behalf of Team VTRA and from my viewer side, I really want to thank you for
Thank you for
covering this
inviting me.
topic like running mechanics so beautifully. There are a lot
Thank
of
you.
new things which I have learned, and I'm sure our viewers also have learned. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. Thanks to the VTRA team for making these kinds of sessions, make sure that I think runners are able to learn. I think this is, I think, my view, as I said earlier, don't be ignorant. You need not make it more complicated, but at the same time, learning in these kind of sessions in a small capsules, I think it's extremely useful.
Yeah, I
So
totally agree.
very, very good initiative, and really appreciate you guys are doing it. And then also all the best for your next race, which is
Thank you
the
so much.
Ultra Paderu. Good luck to all the participants as well as organizing team.
Thank you so much. Okay,
Thank
and
you.
thank you all the viewers. So see you again in episode 6. Okay, thank you so much.